Well, Larry, welcome to my quinoa patch. This looks a lot like the weed we see in the fields of lamb's quarters. It's
Yep.
the same genus. The seed head is the same. It was originally grown by the Incas up in the high Andes, and it was their primary food source, very high in proteins, which is another thing that you get from some of these other examples. You know, where we tend to eat the same thing all the time, add something different in there and you get a different protein in here. The leaves of lamb's quarters, I can remember my grandmother many years ago picking little lamb's quarters, boiling it and feeding it to us. We tried some earlier this spring, and it tastes very much like spinach. So on these we'll harvest, we'll dry the head, we'll harvest by squeezing out the seeds. It makes a little tiny seed. People who are gluten intolerant find that they can turn it into a flour and use it as bread.
Any special requirements? I mean, the farmers here would gladly give you all the lamb's quarter they have growing.
No requirements. It grows well. If you compare this to a regular lamb's quarters, you aren't going to get these big, massive seed heads. Would be about the only difference. But you know, it thrives as a weed. Most plants were once weeds.
I have a question. I see garlic braids for sale and I would like to make my own. Can I use just any type of garlic for this?
Well, the braided garlic chains, you need to realize that there are two major groups of garlic. There is the soft neck and there is the hard neck. The braids are coming from the garlic that are soft neck garlics. The hard necks are very much like the ones that you buy from the grocery store, so that when you use the cloves, there is that center hard part left behind. That is your hard neck remnant. So in order to do the braided garlic, make sure you have soft neck garlic that are pliable and for braiding. Now the fun thing about the braided garlic is not only will you have a decorative component for your kitchen, but it's also functional. So when you need garlic, you can just reach over and take the garlic as needed.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Well, I got an interesting plant right behind us here. Tell me about the history on that one.
That's elephant head amaranth. Amaranth also comes from Central America, the Aztecs and the Mayans, Mexico. The Spanish attempted to wipe it out, the food source for the Native Americans. It has made a comeback. This particular one is called elephant head. I think you can see it's sort of the elephant's trunk on it. Most of the plant is edible, little tiny black seeds, high in oil that also can be ground and used as a flour if you do not have the traditional grain. The leaves are edible. They're used both cooked and raw in salads, just like with the quinoa.
I know the universities in the United States are looking at that particular plant as a potential food source down the road, evaluating at this point to see if it does have some commercial value.
Right. There's even a website where you can buy it. I'm sure that some of these things could be, on a large scale, they could be threshed with a combine, and then cleaned with a fan mill and stuff like that. The potential of heirloom seeds is just immense.
We've looked at a number of different plants here. Do you run into disease problems or insect problems?
There's always going to be disease and insect problems, Larry. I'm isolated, which cuts down on my incidence. I do not use any pesticide. If something becomes highly diseased, I will sacrifice the whole plant, the whole crop, and make a note of it and say, we need to be looking at something else. Disease is going to be there. It's a factor, but remember, you also get some stamina from these plants that have survived in the wild as weeds for a long time.
Well, and that's the value of heirlooms. They've adapted and readapted to
right.
whatever the climate requires.
And every generation we produce at a different latitude, we're going to be building some of those characteristics in and able to keep feeding the world.
Well, Dave and Judy, I want to thank you for being my guests and talking about heirloom seeds. It's been a great show to do for Prairie Yard and Garden, and continue keeping the diversity going.
Our pleasure. You're welcome anytime.